Today's video is on 5 creepy abandoned amusement parks.
Number 5. Spree Park, Germany. What was once home to over 1 million visitors a year is now undoubtedly one of the creepiest theme parks ever. It was initially opened back in 1969 in East Berlin, and it was the only amusement park in the East Germany at the time. However, in 1991, after the reunification of Germany, the park changed ownership, and not too long after, it fell into despair with debts in the millions of euros. The owners couldn't pay off these debts, and in 2002, Spree Park was forced into shutdown. Today, the Ferris wheel is still intact, despite the fact that it hasn't operated ever since the park's closure. Other attractions can also be found. However, many have been destroyed after a fire broke loose back in 2014. Nowadays, there's no more music in the park, and the only thing that can be heard is the creeping of the old rusted wheel and the howling of the wind. Number 4. The Amusement Park in Pripyat, Ukraine. Very likely one of the most popular places in the Ukrainian city of Pripyat is the amusement park, or at least what's left of it. Abandoned because of the Chernobyl disaster, the park never got the chance to welcome any paying guests due to a devastating nuclear disaster which took place only a few kilometers away. It consists of the iconic Ferris wheel, a carousel, bumping cars, and even swings boats. The theme park was meant to open for visitors on May 1, 1986, but only 5 days before the scheduled date, the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant happened. Today, after many years, the radiation levels have gone down drastically. In fact, there are even organized tours for those daring enough to witness the remains of what's now a motionless, abandoned city. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe to our channel with notifications on. Number 3. Dottie Park, Belgium. Dottie Park was created by a local priest in 1950 to give Belgian children a safe place to play. It was actually pretty popular at first, and it even drew in a crowd of 1 million in its first year, which is huge, considering the time period. Dottie Park began as a playground, but it expanded over the years until it became a full amusement park. There were all sorts of slides, carousels, bumper cars, fun mascots, as well as huge swings. But the main attraction was actually the bridge. At the time, the 800-meter-long path was the longest suspended walkway in Europe, so it was a pretty big deal. Everything was fine for decades, but as the equipment got older, things got more and more dangerous. The popularity of the park came to a gruesome end in 2000, 50 years after the park's opening, when a 9-year-old boy had his arm ripped off by one of the spinning jet rides. This was the last string in a series of incidents and accidents that sent the park into a death spiral. In 2002, the park was shut down and never successfully reopened, and it wasn't long after it became an abandoned wasteland vandalized by graffiti. Left idle for a decade, the abandoned Dottie Park was finally demolished in 2012. Over the course of the next 2 years, the rides would be taken down, the slides pulled apart, and empty-eyed mascots crushed into dust. Today, the former amusement park plays host to a hiking spot, and the rides turned into scrap. Number 2. Six Flags, New Orleans. One of the creepiest and long-standing remainders of Hurricane Katrina that devastated New Orleans and the surrounding areas is the 140-acre abandoned Six Flags amusement park. The park was originally called Jazzland, but it was then taken over by the Six Flags Company. It was opened in 2000. For a few years, things seemed to be going pretty well for the park. But then in August of 2005, Hurricane Katrina breached the 6-foot earthen berm surrounding the park and overwhelmed drainage pumps. As a result, the park's attractions were left flooded under 7 feet of highly corrosive water for a little over a month. Most of the attractions during this time were completely destroyed, with absolutely no chance of recovering them. The park has been abandoned ever since. Of course, leaving the park abandoned for so many years has created some pretty creepy scenes, as well as some downright dangerous ones. Alligators now swim through the dirty swimming pools and flooded attractions. The colorful show buildings are rotting, filled with debris on the inside. Aside from the graffiti, the the place seems totally empty and hollow. The rides and the roller coasters, on the other hand, are still standing as if someone might ride them again one day. The creepiest thing, however, is that there's still a sign outside the abandoned park that reads, "Closed for the storm." A chilling reminder of the deadly 2005 hurricane that sent water choked with dead bodies and debris flooding through the city. Number 1. The Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. In the 1920s, a businessman by the name of Conley T. Snitto bought the land in Lake Shawnee in West Virginia. The site was a desecrated native burial ground with a long history of tragedy and death. Despite that fact, Snitto wanted to develop the site into an amusement park, so he constructed swings, a Ferris wheel. He even opened up the pond for swimming. Over the years, the park thrived, but death still hung over the area. It is believed around 6 children have lost their lives in accidents at the park. There is one report of a little girl who visited the park for a day out, but met her end while striding the circle swings when a truck backed onto the path of a swing, killing her instantly. Another child reportedly drowned in a swimming pool. In 1966, after the accidents, and with the failing visitor numbers, the park was forced to close down. But it seems the visitors have not stopped. The park's present owner, Gaylord White, is convinced the creaky wooden swings and rusted Ferris wheel are still haunted by the ghosts of many children that died there. In 2005, the park gained more attention from paranormal groups when ABC's Scariest Places on Earth filmed in the park. During filming, a psychic who worked for the program refused to stay on the site due to the spiritual energy being too strong, and the film crew would not film alone at night due to the incredibly eerie feelings. The Lake Shawnee Amusement Park earns a top spot on our list of 5 creepy abandoned amusement parks. Now, let's take a look at some honorable mentions. Land of Oz, Beach Mountain, North Carolina. This 16-acre theme park was modeled completely on the story of the Wizard of Oz. It allowed visitors to assume the role of Dorothy. The park opened in 1970, and it was intended to be a ski resort. It didn't have any of the typical rides, but it showed very famous scenes from the movie, including the home of Dorothy, the forest filled with apple-throwing trees, and at the end of the park was famous and glamorized Emerald City. It was based more on the book rather than the movie, but because it didn't have many rides or anything too exciting, the park closed down. In 1975, a fire broke out in Emerald City and caused many of the original props used in the movie to be destroyed. Chippewa Lake Park, Ohio, USA. When the park opened up in 1878, no one expected Chippewa Lake Park to last as long as it did. The park became infamous for the drunken and lavish behavior of guests. There was a hanging pair of a roller coaster that would have to be pulled back to the top by tendons each time. There was also a general lack of health and safety, and it's amazing that the park survived at all. Not only did the park survive, but it managed to thrive and blossom. The park was acquired by the Beach family in 1896, and they immediately banned both drinking and the sale of alcohol on the premises of the park. They brought in music to the park, built mechanical rides, and transformed that site into a real theme park. The park stayed open for nearly 100 years, but the good times were not to last. Chippewa shut their doors for the final time in 1978. Hadn't been priced out by the competition from the bigger, better, and newer parks opening up in Ohio. By the time the wrecking crews arrived, Chippewa Lake Park had been overgrown and looked like an abandoned concrete playground in a forest.
I hope you all enjoyed today's video, narrated by Zach this time. Be sure to subscribe for more and check out some of our recent uploads.